Today, I want to share with you how reading can help you to become more fluent in English and start a series of some of my favorite books, both books that you could read in English and possibly some that you might want to read in your native language. Welcome to English Coach 3Ts. I'm Tanya, the creator of our brand new fluency program for women and men.
You asked for it, so I created it. My new We Speak Fluency membership is now open for women and men who have an intermediate level of English and want to be more fluent.
If you'd like to take classes with me on Zoom, join conversation groups, and have a platform where you can chat 24/7, this is the membership for you. Look for the link in the description below so that you can get more information and join us in the We Speak Fluency Club. I'll see you in class.
Right now, I'm offering a special discount for new club members, so look for the code below.
Today, I want to share with you one of my all-time favorite books. And when I decided to share my favorite books with you, it was very difficult for me to choose. This one is for sure in my top 10. And the book is The Way of the Peaceful Warrior by Dan Millman. Now, this cover is one of the newer covers. I think I've had actually this particular book for at least 10 years. But when the movie came out to this book, this cover is a picture from the movie. I actually prefer the cover of the book the way it was when I originally read it more than 20, maybe more than 30 years ago. So I'll put the cover here so that you can see that original cover. And if you are out and about, meaning you're out shopping or at a bookstore and you see this book with this original cover, I recommend you buy that one. So today I'm going to share with you a little bit about the book and why I love the book. And also I'm going to share with you how you can read so that your fluency gets better and better all the time. So stick with me. This book was published in 1980 when I was just 14 years old. So I know I read it about 10 or more years after it came out. We say that a book or a movie came out in a certain year. That is when the book was first published or the movie was first in the theaters. And this book was recommended to me by one of my very good friends at the time, and I am forever grateful because in many ways, this book had a huge impact on my life. So let me tell you a little about how you could read this book depending on what level your English is. This book is written for native speakers, but all books written for native speakers are not the same level. Because of the way this book was written, I would say that if you are an advanced, intermediate, or an advanced English speaker, English learner, then you will really enjoy reading this book straight out. In other words, when I say straight out, just read the book like you would read a book in your native language. But let me tell you really important information about how you read if you want your reading to improve your fluency. When you're reading for fluency, it's important to read something where you understand 95% or more. And you don't necessarily find out if that is what you understand based on the number of words you understand. It's more about the number of words you understand, plus how much you understand what is being said, the story, what is being written. Another really important thing about reading for fluency is that you don't want to stop on every page and look up words in a dictionary, whether that is a dictionary like a book or on your phone. It's better to continue reading, especially if you can kind of understand what is happening. You might understand the word even though you don't use it, even though you couldn't tell me exactly what it means, but you understand what is being said, then for sure, keep reading. And even if you're not sure, try to continue to read. If you think you can kind of understand the word, but you're not sure, keep reading, but if you really want to, you could try reading that paragraph again. Not just the word, not just the sentence, but some of what is around the word. This is going to help you to allow your brain time to think about what this word is and what it means in the entire part of what is being written, not just that little part. I'm going to give you some more tips about how you might enjoy this book, even if you are not advanced intermediate. Even if you are a beginning intermediate or an intermediate reader, you still might enjoy this book. But first, let me tell you a little bit more about the book. Dan Millman, the author of this book, is also the main character in the book. The book is based on his life and his experience, but it isn't necessarily a biography. A biography would be a book that is nonfiction, and this book is classified as fiction, meaning that it's mostly true about his life, but they have made it more like a story, something more creative. In the book, Dan is a college gymnast, which is why they have this picture. And he is out one night and he meets a mechanic at a gas station who ends up playing a very important role in his life. The mechanic that Dan meets at this late night gas station is named Socrates, and he really teaches Dan a lot of life lessons like mindfulness, living in the present moment, and challenges his life view. In other words, Dan has some difficult things happening, and Socrates helps him to look at that and see how his view of that, or the way he's thinking about that, might be contributing to the problem. In many ways, the character Socrates in this book is a coach to Dan. Obviously, he has a coach for his gymnastics because he's a competitive gymnast, but this is more of the type of coach we think of today, like a life coach or an English coach, as I am. And one of the things I do with my students is to help you overcome any difficulties. When you have difficulties in becoming fluent, not only can I teach you English, but I help you to overcome or get past these difficulties. So if you would like to read this book and it is a little difficult for you, my first feedback for you would be to save it for a few months until it gets a little easier for you. I know that can be difficult sometimes when we want to read something now, but I can also give you other information on how to read this book. One thing would be to read just pieces of the book, to do that without looking up words in a dictionary, like I mentioned before. But if you do need to look up the words, I recommend, no matter what your level is, that you look up words in an English to English dictionary. And one of my favorite English to English dictionaries is the Merriam-Webster dictionary. I'll put a picture of the logo here. So why do I say an English to English dictionary, and what is that? An English to English dictionary will give you the meaning of the word in English instead of in your native language. Now, this may seem difficult for you, but by the time you're intermediate, if you want to be more fluent, You don't want to be translating in your head. And one of the problems, one of the things that makes it really difficult to stop translating in our head is when we translate things to our native language to understand them. So look it up in an English to English dictionary instead of an English to your native language. For instance, English to Spanish or English to Farsi. If you looked the word up in an English to English dictionary and you're still having a difficult time understanding it, you could ask ChatGPT to give you some examples and explain it to you in English. In this way, you're using your English to learn more English, and of course, this is helping you to be fluent. So let me tell you a little bit more about this book, some other similar books, and tell you another way that you might read this book to help you become more fluent. The message of this book is that Dan overcomes his fears, his doubt, and ultimately his ego, leading him to a much more peaceful life. One of the reasons I loved this book when I read it, and I love it for English learners, is because it's written in a story form. In other words, you're going on an adventure when you're reading the book. You're hearing a story, something that's interesting. And for me, it was the kind of book that I just kept wanting to read. I just wanted to know more. And ultimately, of course, the title of the book, The Way of the Peaceful Warrior, tells us another reason I love it, because it has to do with peace. And if you know me, if you've been following me, you've probably guessed that peacefulness and peace is very important to me. And of course, world peace, peace in our countries, peace in our cities and our towns, peace in our family starts with peace within ourselves. And this book is such a great way to learn about how you can have more of that. In fact, like I said, it was a long time ago that I read this book. I think I was in my mid to late 20s. But I'm definitely going to read it again. I've read it several times, but I'm definitely going to read it again because that's how good it is and that's how much information, good information, it has. Now, there are other books. I don't know if this is a series. These books go with that book. I read this one actually next, Wisdom of the Peaceful Warrior, and then The Journey of Socrates. I've read both of these books more than once. They're also very good, but this is still my favorite. So let me tell you a little bit more about how you could read this book if it is just too difficult to read it and you're not enjoying it. Because enjoying the process, enjoying reading the book is super important to the process of becoming more fluent. And that is to read it parallel. We call it parallel reading. Okay, so this is obviously not that book, but this is a book that I have on my list of books I want to read parallel. In other words, I can read it in English and then I can read it in Spanish, which is my second language. Now, I recommend you read as much as you can in your native language before you try reading any of it in your second language, English, whatever language you're studying, because you don't want to try and interpret line for line or word for word. In fact, they're not even written that way. What you want to do is read it in your native language. For me, that's English. And then let the story just be with you. I like to read a whole chapter or even the whole book and then read the one that I'm trying to learn from. I think you could probably do this in many, many languages. With this book, it is written in a lot of different languages, and this would be a great way to improve your English with this book. And ultimately, if you enjoy getting these kinds of tips and ways of learning, making sure that you're doing things that is not just keeping you stuck, but rather helping you to become more fluent, then I recommend you join me in my We Speak Fluency program for women and men, where I'm going to help you to make sure that what you're doing is helping you to become fluent and to become fluent faster. The link is in the description below. And like I said at the beginning of this video, this is a series. I have several books I want to share with you in this series. And the next one that's coming up is one of my all-time favorite books, all time in my entire life. And it's a book that will be great for beginner intermediate and up for reading in a little bit easier way, but definitely as good as reading this book. If you want to find out more about that, that video is coming soon. But while you're waiting, I suggest you watch this video next to learn more about reading. And I'll see you in class.